This is a special episode, one of the, my friends joining me on a regular basis. So if you read the daily notes or have listened to all of the podcasts, surely at some point you've heard me mention my coach, Phil. This is Phil. So I'm excited to have Phil join me regularly for conversations. And I just real quickly wanted to tell the backstory of how we got connected, because it's how so many things I think in the pursuit of your authentic life play out. When you meet people that you're supposed to meet, they happen. So an advisor friend of mine, Nick, who is also a friend of Phil, was like, hey, you need to meet this guy. I think Nick may have recommended that I read Breath. And we were talking about like cold plunging and things like that. He's like, you got to meet this guy. He does coaching. He does cold plunge and sauna. I just think you guys would hit it off. And I don't know if Nick was trying to help you grow your business or what, like why he felt the need to make the connection. But we spoke on, I remember it was a Friday afternoon, because I don't usually do calls on Friday afternoon. And it wasn't even about coach, it was just the connection. And I just remember hanging up that phone like, I really like this guy. And it came up with what you do. And I was like, maybe I'll work with him. You invited me to the house to do a complimentary session. So I actually was going to be in Huntington Beach for Future Proof. You're just down the way. So I left the conference, went and met you in person. We did a little bit of coaching. We did some breath work. I did my first cold plunge sauna routine. And then like, I remember leaving being like, all right, I'm going to work with this guy. I wasn't looking for a coach, didn't really want a coach, didn't know how a coach would help me out. I always thought coaches would try to box me in, but there was something about that phone call with the meetup that really told me that I needed to be working with you. And I remember we talked when I got back and I was like, I'm in. And I had no idea what the cost was. Like I was committing to say yes, not knowing what was going to be the cost. And the reason I wanted to share all of that is on top of all the stuff you've helped me out with over the last year and a half, navigating whether or not to merge with a firm, working on my book now, navigating the boys and finding my way through all of the stuff I'm doing and kind of going into this business of the authentic life, our relationship really shaped the way I want to show up for my clients that choose to do the coaching through Align Life Plus. So like the fact that my offering is a weekly call, that's because of our weekly calls. Like I'll tell people, I want to have my clients excited to see me. Like I'm excited to see you every Thursday because I know we're getting ready to do something really good. And that hour like flies by.
Yeah, it's a flash. Yeah.
So I just wanted to give everybody the backstory. I wanted to give you your flowers publicly and thank you for everything you've helped me do over the last year and a half and what's coming up. Because it's been, I don't think I sit here as the version of myself with the clarity that I have and the focus if it wasn't for our sessions. And you can totally clip this and put this on your website like as a testimonial. But I wanted to, and also, I just also wanted to like let people know that coaching is a part of what I want to do with my offering, and not to make this an advertisement for what I do, but it's because of the value that I have learned that a coach can provide through working with you. And I have a lot of comfort in saying you should pay me to be your coach if it's the right fit, because I have my own coach. Like I'm not telling you to hire a coach, but I don't have a coach. I have a coach. I know the value, and I want to do for other people what you do for me. So I wanted to give that intro. Usually I don't do intros like that, but I felt like it was warranted. And I've been talking this whole time, and I know you want to say something, but I don't want you to say anything else. But I want to go straight to the conversation. So you just told me before we started that it's been 5 years since you ended a chapter of your life for a new one. And that's what I wanted to start our conversation with, was talking about, the ending of one version of yourself, the development of another. What was that like? How did you do it? What were you feeling? What did you learn? And kind of have that conversation. So tell me about the end of one chapter, the beginning of another that started 5 years ago.
I will, but first I do have to say thank you for inviting me to be with you. It's a huge honor. And gosh, man, I feel the same way about you. It's just been such an honor to walk alongside you in the journey. It's been so fun to have a front row seat watching you do what you do. And for everybody listening, there's a lot more coming. So just prepare yourself. Okay, your question. 5 years. So my wife and I were pastors for 20 years, and we were church planter pastors, which means it was startup. In business world, it's entrepreneurial startups. In church world, it's planting. Instead of starting a business, you're planting a church because it's a community. So you're establishing a community in a place, and it has a lot of context. So that's why they call it church planting. But that's what we did for 20 years. We were partners. We were a team, and we always did it together. And it wasn't even a job for us, man. It was like it just was what we lived and breathed. I couldn't fathom doing or seeing anything else. It's what I went to school for, and it's what we gave our whole lives to. But it is interesting. Maybe I don't know. It was years before we left. Started to notice a shift and a longing to do something else, and even evolving in the way that we think and the way that we see, and um, how we understand the world, and how we want to engage the world, and where we want to put our energies and where we want to put our family's energies. I think it's part life stage. It was part um, beginning to dream a different dream of doing some other work and some other things. It was part um, evolving in how we wanted to work and the things we were doing. And that really culminated in a moment of it was like a giant leap of just saying we're going to step. Like, we had no plan. We didn't know what we were going to do next. We had no business plan. We had no strategy, but we had um, just the trust that it was time to end one chapter and to say goodbye to, a community of dear friends that we'd spent years, decades with, some of them, to launch into the unknown and to try a bunch of other stuff and to experiment our way into what's next. And that was wild. I was 40 years old when we did it. It was a wild leaping. At first, it was really exhilarating, and then it was like, what are we doing? But yeah, it was a thing, man.
Can you recall kind of the fear of the unknown and the uncertainty and with the ending of a chapter? So I got to witness Ange, and she did a podcast episode about it, and her chapter of 12 years of running her store.
Yeah.
And what we kind of realized through that process, either just our conversations and people reaching out to her, was that and we've talked about this, a lot of people stay in chapters longer than they should.
Mm.
And I think that, like, for Ange, one of her fears was she didn't want people to think that she failed and that she was ending this chapter because she couldn't cut it, when that wasn't the case at all. And so I think a lot of times we keep ourselves from ending a chapter because of the unknown, the fear, change. We don't love change. Like, do you remember how you felt when you realized, okay, this chapter it is time for this to end, and why didn't you keep it going longer than you should have?
That's a really good question. I think it was ultra scary for us because the way that we had built our life as a family that was planting a church, now leading a church, it was all embedded into one thing. And so it was our job, but it was like our calling, it was our community, it was our spirituality, it was our paycheck, it was our orientation to the world, it was our kids' orientation, it was everything in one thing. And so leaving that, it was dude, it was a lot. It was very overwhelming. And there's a lot of grief. It was like a death. Because you aren't just stepping out of a job into a new job, you're stepping out of like a life. And I don't think we fully understood that when we were leaving. It wasn't like, we're going to step out of a life. It was more, hey, we're ready to take on something new. And we just feel this urgency that we got to do it right now. And we're going. And then when we stepped out, we realized, whoa, that was a bigger leap than I realized it was. It may have been helpful. Like I took my son when he turned 18, my oldest son, to skydiving. And it was like, yeah, we're going to do this thing. And then I remember being in the plane, and when they rolled that door open, I was like, what have we done? It's kind of like that,
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm flashing back to the memory of what that was like.
That's all I wanted. I wanted you to go back to the moment and see what you felt and what came up. Was there anything that you remember doing that you think helped you and Jen?
I knew it was time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's a lot of things that were happening simultaneously for us.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of a cognitive, like, hey, we want to do new things and take everything we've learned, get some more tools, and build something new and fresh. We've been doing the same thing, our whole life. There was that. I think there was some like emotional sort of draw, some spiritual evolution. There was a lot of things that were culminating together.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what really pushed us over the edge is my dad died. and he died like unexpected. He died fast. And I remember sitting with him. He was in hospice. He had cancer, but he didn't find out till it was pretty late. And I went to visit him at the hospital, and then the doctor was like, "This is it." And we said, "What?" So we, took him back to my brother's house, and my brother and I just hung with him. Eventually, my other brother came out from Texas. We all just sat with him for that last week and few days.
Mm-hmm.
And I had these long nights of sitting next to him, and I had a journal, and it was like we were on like watch duty with him, 24 hours a day. And I had this really profoundly healing moment because he and I hadn't been close, throughout our whole relationship. It had been a bit disconnected, and we found this really cool reconnection at the end, and a lot of healing actually. And I remember for me, there was a couple of things like really critically that happened all at the same time. I think one was there was like a healing. It sounds weird, but I had spent my whole life trying to get his approval. He's my dad, it's a classic dad wound stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had this realization sitting next to his bed at 2 a.m. that I actually realized he had spent his life trying to get my approval, and that he felt like he didn't have it. And it was a really weird flipping of a father and a son. And I remember like the last real lucid conversation we had together was me saying that night, like giving him my approval, telling him I loved him and I was proud of him and thanked him for what he gave us. And he returned and he gave me the same thing, but it was like something energetically shifted in me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a realization that I'd probably spent a lot of my life trying to get other people's approval, the church, the community, the whole like capital C institutional, whatever, the whole universe. I wanted its approval, and something shifted and I didn't need it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually felt like the second half of my life was going to be in that new energy. And yeah, it was wild, dude. And then when he passed away a few days later, I remember telling Jen, because we'd been toying with, is it time? Like, what are we going to do next? And how does this look? And I actually said, hey, it's like, I'm ready right now. And I'd seen that, like, there was things my dad wanted to do that he didn't accomplish. He didn't want to do. And I'm like, time is short. Now is the time. Like, I'm not going home to the same thing in life that I was in. And it was this little window of maybe 3 months of intense energy. I would not recommend to anyone listening to make life decisions like that. I would wait 6 months before you make that kind of decision, but we did not, hence the no plan, hence the no strategy. But just, that was in a highly activated state emotionally, nervous system, and we just took the leap. And it was COVID at the time, so things were crazy anyway. And we just did it. We just kind of jumped out of the plane. And it would have been way nicer to have a plan. But I don't think we would have got where we did had we had some plan, because it allowed us to find our way here. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
that did drive it. That emotional change. I have the notes in my journal still. I've looked at it. It was a profound moment that shifted my whole being, and then it shifted the way I see the world, and it still affects me to this day of how I do work and how I work with you or how I work with anybody.
I think it's traditional advice to say don't make the big decision in that state, but you kind of hinted at, like, if you would have waited 6 months, maybe you didn't. Like, maybe you needed that energy and that disruption and the change to make you go do this thing, because that was, to me, it sounds like that was driven more so calling, passion, heart, not mind. Like, it sounds like that decision was made not with the mind, because I think the mind probably would have taken you away from it. And had you waited 6 months, then maybe some of that emotion from losing dad and realizing what he didn't get to do and not wanting that would have subsided a little bit, and we got back to normal reality. And then the mind takes over and like, no, why would you ever do this? And maybe you didn't. So I think that's the importance of like knowing yourself, being able to read yourself and listen to yourself and know what is it you're supposed to act on and what is it that you're not.
It's true. And so plus I had Jen, who's my wife, my partner.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, it's a ride or die. So it's together. And so it was discerning that together. And we actually sat on that decision for 6 weeks together before we made a move on it. We just sat in it together. Like, is this what we want to do? And before we began having conversations of what that could look like beyond us. I had a really incredible mentor, coach, friend, all the above, who was like a guide in that season that was really, really helpful, who'd been through a similar journey himself. Um, he would call me every day. I had a community of friends that would call me every day and check on me as well that really carried us. Um, so, I mean, those things made it doable, honestly, and gave enough support around it where we weren't just leaping in the dark, which I think doesn't sound as crazy. It is like when I took my son skydiving. I was strapped onto somebody, and they pulled the chute, um, but you still had to jump.
So, what was the transition like from the church and pastor to expansion lab? Like, did you go straight from there to what you're doing now, or were there things along the way, experiments and things that evolved into expansion lab?
It was a total evolution. So we knew we wanted to experiment. We knew we wanted to try things. Um, I was thinking about this right before we got on this call together, and we were. It was interesting because it was like startup world, but in a spiritually entrepreneurial place, which sounds funny, but it was. And in that sense, with the background that um, we had this experience of building organizations, developing leaders, and really like just sitting and holding people through the craziest times of life and through crises and through development and learning what it is to help people grow. And that's what we wanted to do was just keep doing that. We called it ministry when we were in a church. And when we left, we didn't leave with a business plan, but we did have a couple decades of pattern recognition, really, about what it takes to develop people. And so our whole thing was we help people grow. And so we just started experimenting. And we started three things at the same time, like three different businesses. It was like a progressive spiritual community where we were helping people grow spiritually. We got certified in marriage and relationship coaching. We got certified in breath work and thermal contrast therapy. So we had like a coaching practice, we had a development practice, we had a breath work and thermal contrast workshop business. And eventually all those threads came together and integrated, and we called it Expansion Lab. And so like it's kind of like we spent these 20 years developing people and leaders and churches and nonprofits, but we didn't call it that. But now it's even evolved further into like it's primarily around leadership development within scaling organizations is where a lot of our work is evolving into even now. And so I guess like the world we had in the church was sort of the best leadership development boot camp that nobody knows exists. I don't know, but it was powerful. Yeah.
Well, as you were describing that, I couldn't help to think that, the 20 years prior, it's like breadcrumbs. Like, you had to go do the planting and all of that to be able to do the work you're doing today. And like in the moment, we don't realize that what we're doing now is preparing us for something in the future that we don't even know exists.
Yeah.
And so it's like, then when you look back, you're like, oh, it makes sense. I can connect all of the dots. Like, I thought I was supposed to do this and this is why I was doing it, but maybe that was to prepare me for this. And it kind of sometimes makes me, I believe in manifestation. I believe that like we can have a vision of what we want and we can kind of create that and make it happen through the manifestation stuff and also the doing. But then where I sometimes question is what I'm trying to manifest what's really supposed to be for me. So like I kind of go back and forth and like, okay, you may have been manifesting this big vision of planting these churches and staying and all of that. And you're potentially creating a reality that's not really what you're supposed to do. So it's like, at what point do we try to keep influencing what we want to bring to a reality, but then also realize that we don't have as much control as maybe that we think we do. Like, we think we know what we're supposed to do, but at
Right.
the end of the day, we don't, because there's so much is gonna happen between now and the future that's going to change where we think our destination is, because something happens that makes us aware of something we never knew, and that new information says, well, maybe I'm supposed to be over here instead of over here.
Well, totally. And it's also, I mean, it's like all those pieces you're, I don't just want to say supposed to, but they're critical in the journey. And it's easy to want to run from the uncomfortable bits or the parts of the story that don't quite fit or that didn't go as you planned. But if you can come to peace with them and integrate them, even all the bits of our journey before and the relationship with my dad, if I didn't go through that, it wouldn't have made me oriented the way that I am, even in the work that I do. Um, I think even all the different streams of work that we were doing, I thought we were going to do one thing, and then we ended up doing something else, and then three other things, and then it came together to culminate into something bigger. And even like now, it's evolved into something even beyond that, which I personally find fascinating as we're in the journey. And so we ended up getting really embedded with one really big organization, and coached, I don't know, over 100 leaders within the organization over the last few years, and then over 1,000 hours of coaching with them. And from that, these patterns emerged, and this recognition of some next steps that they needed. And we realized coaching wasn't enough, and that their teams needed like operating systems, and they needed like leadership infrastructure. And so we just started creating that for them and working with teams at a larger level. Um, and now we've sort of turned into like a leadership infrastructure organization, which is not what I left going, we're going to start a leadership infrastructure organization. I wouldn't even know what that is, but we combine like strategic architecture and facilitation with executive coaching. And then we built a leadership lab, which is like a 6-month development plan for people to go like whole self, whole person, like go, the first part of it's all the way inward to becoming the kind of person that can be a leader. And then it's like working with teams, then it's like organizational development. And we're in a world that I never saw coming. But it was just staying open and staying curious and staying really present to what it is and where it is, and where it's taking us. And it does feel like we're on a journey where we're just being taken somewhere, and we're staying open to it. And it's funny. I mean, one of the people I work with most, I love him so much. He said he spent 2 hours trying to explain the work we do with another organization. He's like, I couldn't quite name it, which made me laugh. But he's like, it's changed our company and our people, and I don't know, man. It's wild, as you say, with the manifesting. Sometimes you don't know what you're manifesting, and you're just staying curious and following the path as it takes you to where you're supposed to go.
I want to come back and talk about evolution real quick. But before that, I just want to point out one thing I think is really interesting that I noticed a similarity to the Integrated Wealth Advisor program I'm in right now. Um, you mentioned that the coursework for the leaders starts inward. I think most people think a coaching program for leaders is going to start with like how do you manage people and get the most out of your team and all this and that. But you and Jen are starting with how do we make you the best version of you? Like you
Mm-hmm.
can't help lead others if you aren't where you need to be. And the
Yeah.
connection to the IWA was like we went to our kickoff retreat, and everything that 2.5 days or 2 days we were there in Phoenix was nothing about our clients. It was all introspective work on us. And it was kind of the same thing. We can't be doing the work we want to do as integrated wealth advisors to help our clients if we don't have clarity within ourselves. So I wanted to point that out, that I think so many times people are looking for, growth or improvement or to get better, and they're doing all these external things,
Right.
when if they just turn inward and work on themselves, they'll probably see the growth they want to see, and all the other things will connect by working on them, not all these external things.
It's true. Well, and also the way I mean, this is the way we work. This is the way we think. It's the way we always have done it in terms of development with people, whatever you name it. Um, it's cumulative and it builds. So, like, if you don't do the inner work, if you don't understand your identity, if you don't understand how to manage your energy and your time, if you don't understand, all those pieces of what it takes to be a person who doesn't just lead, but is actually like you're overflowing from your capacity as a human. Um, you can't do the other things down the line, and so it has to build that way. So if you're building something over here, it's organizational development strategies, but you don't have the ability to regulate yourself in a very stressful environment. You can't do it, and so all the things have to build on each other in order to do it. I love your program started that same way.
I also think that you are a better leader when you are happy with yourself, when you love yourself. And so,
Yeah.
like, if you've got internal things that are disconnected, then you're probably not going to be leading people as well as you could, where you have that internal calm and peace and you know you're in the right place and you're doing it because you. So I just see how the work internal makes the external so much better. As within, so without. Like you fix the inside and the leadership stuff will end up taking care of itself. And then you become an example for your team and they begin to do the inner work and they become better. And it's just like, it's like
Yeah,
spirals into it.
absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So go back to evolution. You mentioned kind of the leaving and the starting the next chapter. You launched 3 businesses. They were 3 separate things, and yet somehow they kind of came together to create Expansion Lab. And Expansion Lab today is not Expansion Lab of day one. And you could have
Right.
never imagined you would be this leadership uh, company that you are now. How do you navigate the evolution? Because I was a victim of this much more before, of like shiny object syndrome and trying all of the things.
Mm,
And like that was a phase that I had to go through to find the authentic life. And now I get a lot less shiny object. I'm still doing a bunch of things, but they're all unified. And I think that that's a part of my evolution. So how do you know how to navigate and when it's time to experiment, when it's time that's a distraction? Like how do you navigate that evolution? Because I don't think it's necessarily easy to do if you've never done it before.
yeah, it raises the question of, is this like a personality thing? You know, is this like there's certain people that are wired for risk and entrepreneurial living? Maybe. But I think it is a way of seeing the world and of seeing yourself and of engaging it, of really deep curiosity and a really deep sense of trust, I think, in yourself, but also in, you know, I would say the spirit, the divine, and the universe. Different people would say, but it's like I trust that we're on the path and it's okay. And there's a piece of us too that we didn't leave a life that was very stable to like go 2 steps and then build the next thing and be stable there. You know what I mean? We left a life to go on an adventure. I actually remember being really scared, maybe a year into it, because I we're figuring it out, and maybe in a little less than a year, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like what are we doing? Like, because it didn't have, there wasn't enough structure to it yet. And my brother and his wife were visiting us. It was a holiday, and I remember his wife said, "Hey, this is the adventure. This is what you live for." And I remember just going, "You're right." I held on. I've held on to that for 5 years now. It is the adventure, and so for us, it's like there isn't some destination for me of going. That's the thing that I'm trying to get to and build. There is a constant openness, and I think that curiosity is what drives it. And so when we do establish something, it just becomes like a base of exploring beyond that. Um, like, I mean, the company I was talking about, working with so many different people, you work with 50 people and you log 5, 6, 700 hours. You notice the themes and the patterns, and you go, there is a universal problem here and a universal need in a path. Well, I can create that. That's easy. So boom, I'll just do it. And here it is, guys. And is this helpful? Yes, it is. Hey, what if we created a new model? And actually, we brought together like this. We brought in these 17 resources. We adjusted this. We synthesized that. We can make it a hybrid. Like we'll take the CEO roundtable coaching model, sort of chop it in half, and we'll make a hybrid with this one-to-one thing we were doing. We'll elevate it, and we'll create 3 tiers. And what if we build a 6-month program for everyone? So from the bottom up, the culture's changing. From the top down, the strategy's adjusting. And they're like, yeah. I was like, well, let's do it. And there's just complete reorientation. And then it's like you're like, I mean, it's like into parenting. I know we were talking about that earlier. It's like the same with your kids. It's just hyper aware of where they're at and curious and present. I just think it's that way with life generally, so that you can adapt to it and adapt to what's happening and where it's going and build around that. Um, it can be exhausting, you know. Like, where are we going to be next year? I don't know. If we're where we are now, it'd be great, but I'm open to where it could keep going, you know?
I think one of the things that with evolution can sometimes be tricky is, you know, am I evolving or am I moving goalposts? and kind of being able to discern between the two. Which one I think is a great reason, not to plug us, but that's a great reason to have a coach. Is to or, you know, it doesn't have to be a coach, a partner, your spouse, a friend,
Yeah.
but somebody to talk through and say, hey, like so much of our time together is me talking through things and you listening and then providing a great thought or wisdom or experience or what you've observed for me to process as well. But like, I do think you could mix up this is an evolution versus this is me moving a goalpost. And I think it all comes back to like the why and the motivation. And it's one of those things we were talking about in my book. And like one of the problems is so much of what I am trying to explain is a feeling. And so, how do you know if it's evolution or moving the goalposts? It's probably going to be a feeling. Like you can write all the you can write down a pluses and minuses, pros and cons, and you can analyze all the numbers and everything and compare if you do it versus if you don't. Like there's definitely going to be data behind it, but at the end of the day, whether or not it's right and it's truly evolution or it is moving a goalpost, is probably going to be a feeling. And like, how do you get people to know it, like to know that feeling? I think the feelings are when you feel it, you know, and the more times you've experienced these feelings, you get to identify them better. Like whether it's, you want to call it intuition or whatever it is, like you
Yeah.
just know. And I think a lot of times when we're younger and before we understand this, we have that feeling of knowing, but we don't know what that feeling is, and we oftentimes dismiss it because that knowing feeling probably conflicts with what our mind is saying. And we kind of grow up trusting our mind, and we think that's the way to go. And so we never really get to test that knowing feeling. Um, I don't know where I wanted to go with that, but just I think that evolution could be mistaken for moving the goalpost and vice versa. And it's you have to figure out how to know. And sometimes, and then I'll shut up. Sometimes it is you go through the evolution, and in that going, you realize, nope, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing, and you kind of pivot back. And in that, now you know, or maybe you learn something in that experiment, and you come back to what it was, and maybe you don't go back down that path. So I rambled a lot. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
No, that's a great distinction, man. I think it'd be interesting to define that actually between the
Hmm.
two. Because for me, I mean, I don't know how I define moving the goalpost. I guess if you're more money, more
Right.
something, bigger vision, longer term, sort of vision scope or
Hmm.
scope creep or whatever.
Or even like,
Um,
are you adding more to the business just to add more to the business?
right.
Are you adding a new service just to add a new service? And that, in a sense, is to me is a moving a goalpost of like, okay, I
Yes.
said I wanted a business to do this, and now I'm going to bring this thing in
Ah.
here. Is that like, are my clients telling me I need this, or am I seeing this as a theme that I need to, like you mentioned, bringing the course in? That was
Yep.
off of all these hours and identifying the same themes in a in a framework
Yes.
to fix it. Like that's evolution. But I'm sure there are some businesses who create a course just to create a course, and that's like
That's what we do now. Yeah. There's a
exactly.
market
It's
for that.
not really an evolution, it's something we're forcing, and to me, that's a moving of the goalpost.
Yes. I mean, evolution for me is growth. And so it's growing cognitively, it's growing spiritually, it's growing emotionally, it's growing physiologically and how you regulate your nervous system and manage stress. Um, it's growing in your capacity, it's growing in your ability to do new things. And I actually think so when we left, there is one big conviction that I had. I told you I wasn't going to get into this, but here I am. I think I'm convinced that the world is going through a massive evolution currently, it always is, but like in a really catalytic, sped up way. And there's lots of shifts that are happening simultaneously. I mean, obviously, like the whole world, right? But under that, there's other shifts that are driving it, and there's these historical cycles that are causing these shifts. And so, if, like spiritually, part of it is there's these 500-year cycles. This author, Phyllis Tickle, talks about it in some really good books that she's written on how every 500 years, the institution of church or Christianity is what she's writing about, goes through these cycles of pulling everything apart. And it's a long deconstruction. She says takes like 120 to 150 years. And then there's a reconstruction, a reformation, or something new that's birthed. that usually takes like 50 years to 200 years of that. It's like a weird turning where we reconstruct it. So the last one was the Great Reformation, which is like led to all kinds of shifts in the world. And then it's kind of business as usual. But we're at the turning point from that. They think it started around 1900. So it's this turn from pulling things apart to creating something new. And she says, like, historically, it's all symbiotic with economics, with morality, with government, with law, with it's all like connected together. So you with politics, so like you change one thing, everything gets shifted, and it's not like change church, it changes the world, which I think it's symbiotic. It's all driving each other. It's all happening at the same time. But we're in the midst of that. And then you look underneath that, you read a book like The Fourth Turning, and it talks about the 80-year generational shifts and how we're at a turning right now, which is like the crisis generation that drives towards whatever's next. But then you look at the technological shifts that move in 80-year cycles as well. And we're at one of the biggest turnings in history technologically with the advancement of AI, with renewable energy, with bioengineering, and like the whole world shifting around that, which is going to shift all of our economics around that as well. And then in all of our politics globally, I mean, everything, we're in the midst of the most wild, polarizing turnings. And I think you could layer that in so many ways. And for me, in leaving, I wanted to say, how do we help create a more loving world? How do we help create a world that's actually better on the other side of this? And then how do we help develop people to be the kind of leaders and the kind of people generally that are able to lead us into that world? Because I do think we're in a bit of a crisis of leadership.
No, yeah, no
I mean,
doubt.
this is I don't want
You're
I'm not
stating the
trying to
obvious.
make a
I don't think anybody would. I don't think anybody would disagree with
okay.
that. Like you
I
look
think
at,
across the board, crisis of
I
leadership.
mean,
So for
yeah,
me, our work was always help. How do we help people grow? But really, it's how do we help create processes, environments, like everything we've ever done in Expansion Lab is how do we help people grow? But really, that's always been about how do we help people become better leaders, almost like next tier consciousness, better leaders who are able to navigate the complexities of everything that's changing right now, so that we can, obviously avoid blowing ourselves up, but actually create the world that we all want to live in and want our kids to live in the future. And so that's where the thread of evolution for me is always running, is like I'm constantly looking for that thread. And so, man, if you can create that in a business, and then that business creates that in X number of families and X number of people and leaders, and even the products that they're creating for the world, oh my gosh, you're changing the world, And so it's constantly like I always see our work as a catalyst for changing the world, which Jen laughs at me because I use this huge language.
no, I would agree with that because I read this and or I heard it, but basically like change doesn't happen like in the mass. Change happens one by one. Like if you are creating more great leaders, then one by one those great leaders go impact more people, and it's almost like the you know slowly then all at once type of thing. And like
Yeah.
it's not the goal is not change a big group of people. It's change a bunch of individuals and let the individuals begin to enact that change, and then that's how you really make the change. But I agree with you about like I don't know all of the cycles. You know me, I'm not the super data guy. Like I see things, observe things, I feel it. Okay, it's got to be true. But I observed that, and I read a Substack today. I'll send it to you. I'll put it in the show notes. But it's not exactly the same, but it is connected a little bit of this change. It's called I Quit, and the guy who wrote it was talking about Kai Cenat and how he left streaming, like the most successful streamer making all this money. One day just made a post and said I quit, and he's done streaming, and he wanted to go into fashion. And what he used that to be an example. And Charlie XCX is a musician. He talked about her as well. She went into acting. It wasn't just about them. What he was writing about is he said that the American dream is dead, which sounds a little like hyperbolic, but what he was saying is the old life that we were once promised. If you like basically he was saying the American dream was a contract. If you do these things, you will get this. If you go to college, if you work a career, if you do these things that we tell you to do, you'll have the house with the white picket fence, you'll have a pension, you'll have a good life, and like you buy into this. And for so long, it worked. People did those things, they
Yeah.
got that. Not entrepreneurs necessarily, but
Sure.
now you're having people who are following that lead, but they're not getting those things they were once promised. The contract has been broken.
Yeah.
You go to school, you go to college, you walk away with tons of student loan debt into a work environment now where they're telling you entry level jobs are not going to exist and home prices are way too much for you to buy a home. So like this American dream that everybody bought into no longer exists. And people are saying, well, if I'm not going to get what I was promised, then why am I going to do this stuff according to what I'm supposed to do? Let me go do what I want to do. And so more people are looking to do things on their own terms, and technology is allowing them. And I see, and maybe it's because it's what the authentic life is all about. I see more people waking up to wanting to do things the way they feel they want to do it. And they're seeing that other people are doing that and it's possible. And I think
Mm.
that's not the only shift going on, but I think that's a part of it as well. So I think that shift is going on.
I agree. I think it's part of the massive changes that we're seeing. And what's funny, when we initially left, I'm like, oh, this is happening like next 6 months. It's going to be different. And truthfully, it could take like 100 years for shifts like this to shake out. Um, at like a meta level, obviously with these 80-year turnings that they talk about with technology and industry and economy, it's much faster. But it's not all at once. And the truth is, it isn't happening to us. Um, like my friend, dear friend, mentor, he talks about, you are the traffic. He says, when you're sitting in traffic and you get all pissed off and you're like, oh, there's
Mhm.
so much traffic. How am I going to get to where I'm going? He's like, you are in the traffic. Like, you literally are the traffic.
Right.
I do feel like it's that. Like, it's that
Mhm.
mindset now. Is it isn't just happening to us. We're all participating in what it's becoming. Obviously, there's powerful people dictating things at levels that we don't have a say in, but collectively, we're the traffic, and we do have an impact on this world that we're shaping. So it isn't like we're waiting for it to be handed to us. I'm a firm believer that we are co-creating whatever this thing is, and so I'm hoping there's more and more people that are really capable of co-creating that in a beautiful way that makes a more loving, better world. It would be my hope.
So that makes me think of another post I wrote today. So this is what I'm excited about for my conversations with friends. Like we didn't waste, but the first half hour of this was like setting the stage for who Phil is. But these are the conversations that I have with people all the time that I want to record and share. So like this is what I am excited about. And we might not, we're gonna not get to parenting today. We'll bring that in next time because I want to stay on this
Okay.
thread. Because I read another Substack by the author goes by the name of The Fourth Way, and I forget the title of it was. Let me find it real quick. It was about like success, and he was saying that it was he read somewhere possible that like if there were 200 people, all it would take would be 200 highly conscious people focusing, and like
Ah,
that could change everything. So back to we are like the change is happening through us and we are all co-creating. I think that's very, very true. I'll link to that one as well. Like that's a one of the like 9 out of 10 on the Woo scale that my friend Tom Morgan created. But it was really good, but it was perfect to what you're saying. And
hmm,
what I've read about this shift going on, it may not seem like it now because it seems chaotic and doom and gloom everywhere.
right.
But that on the other side of this, like this is what we're experiencing now, according to some, is what we have to experience for
Yeah.
the overall consciousness, like the collective consciousness to elevate. And at an
I think
elevated
so.
state of consciousness, then like life actually ends up getting better. But we have to go through this, and like the institutions have to crumble in order for new levels of consciousness to be possible for people and to kind of rise. So everything that I've read about this is actually makes me optimistic about the other side of all the junk that's going on right now.
Yeah. It just takes a lot to get there. And it isn't all at once. And hopefully it requires, or there's the kind of people that can step into those roles and lead in that way. I mean, everywhere, right? So, like, that's where I think the work we've done has always been, in one way, I tell people it's the same thing I've always done. Whether I'm talking to you about your marriage or your parenting or your job or this strategy with your team where we need to execute whatever by this date, and then how are you going to get there, and then you're, whatever. If we're working on your book, or we're working on, you name it, I think it's helping people grow, helping systems grow and evolve into this kind of language,
Catastrophic Success was the name of the post that the fourth way wrote. And he leads off with this experiment by Dr. William Begston. He like used energy to heal mice that had cancer. And like the cancer they had, it would kill all the mice before the 29th day. And he had so much success with this healing of the mice that the energy of the mice that were healed like spread to like the control mice. So now like he was so successful, and energy is what did it. It like was catastrophically successful to his study, because now the study no longer worked because the control mice who were supposed to die were now surviving because of the energy. So his thing about the 200 people is the energy that can change everything. So
I've
much
heard
interesting stuff out there
about that. I couldn't give you the details, but
yeah,
at least from my own experience, but that's fascinating to me.
Mhm.
That's
Okay,
fascinating.
before we end, I do want to bring back to your and Jen's story. We're not going to get into parenting like I wanted to. That might be our next one. Is
Okay.
like how do we help?
Yeah.
How do we help our boys avoid needing the type of coaching that you do and I do when they're older? Like, how do we help them learn this stuff earlier so they need other levels of coaching in the future? So we'll talk about that in the next one. And Ange and I just recorded a podcast yesterday about that. So it'd be cool to kind of circle back to that in 6 months or so. But what I want to talk about with the boys, we haven't talked much about it. You referenced it, but you made this big change while having 3 boys to take care of as well. And
Yeah.
I want to just hear what you have to say about that, because I think for a lot of people, understandably, having a family can keep them in a chapter too long. The fear of not being able to provide, the fear of, if this doesn't work out, what does it do to my family? And that there are people who have families, who have kids, that take these risks and change their lives and do the things they're supposed to while they have kids. So it is a consideration, but I don't want having a family to be something that keeps people from doing what they're supposed to do. So what was the experience like knowing you had 3 mouths to feed, and college coming down the road, and all the things that come with kids, while you decided to
Yeah.
walk away from this income and this life that you had?
It was really scary. That was the hardest part. Well, it was one of the hardest parts. It was really scary. I mean, and if there, there's so many layers to that. There's like, what do they think of me? Are we causing them damage, or should we be putting money in an account for their therapy? Because I mean, they were as much a part of the community that we were a part of, and so it was a big shift for them. In terms of not running that anymore, it was just part of their identity. They knew nothing else. They'd grown up in that their whole life, and so it was like, whoa, what are you guys doing? And they were fairly young. I mean, 2 middle school kids and a elementary kid, and so I mean, it was COVID. This is the beauty of that time for us. Is typically in middle school, kids start to naturally pull away, and their peers become their greatest influence. But it was COVID, and so we decided that first year to just take a lot of space for ourselves. So we went and lived in Hawaii for a month. Our friends had a place there. Then we went on this road trip where we drove up to Canada and back, and we would just surf and adventure. And like, so we got so close. We got closer in those middle school years. And it just became a really sweet season for our family. And then it was just like a crazy exercise in trust. A lot of sleepless nights. Like, are we going to make it? Are we going to figure it out? And in the very, very beginning, as you're stepping out in those times. But yeah, I don't know, man. The beauty of them, they were involved in us starting the churches from the beginning and building the communities, and they helped. Then they were involved in us leaving and then building the new thing, and that's what they've only ever known. And so I think it's shaped them in really profound. That journey shaped them in profound ways that living in perfect, like cookie cutter, everything is set here for you life. no change with mom and dad, I don't think it would have gave them. I'm sure it would give them their own challenges that they'll have to work through. But yeah, it gave them a different perspective and a different way of thinking and operating, honestly. That It'd be interesting to see how that shakes out.
I bet it also gave them, whether they'll be entrepreneurs or not, like their mom and dad, it has to have given them a little bit of like the entrepreneurial spirit. And like I want my boys to have that, because to me the entrepreneurial spirit is, if you need to, you can create something. So I don't care if the boys are business owner, but I like, this is my story, my perspective. I don't want to rely on anybody else. I want to rely on me. I'll bet on myself 11 times out of 10. And like what I see so many times is people, they they need to bet on themselves to make their situation better, but they can't. They don't know how. And Ange and I are both entrepreneurs. So I'm hoping that my boys see that. They don't show the entrepreneurial spirit right now, but I want them to be like, if they're in a tough situation, I want them to say, okay, I can go out and do something to change it. I don't want them to be stuck. And it doesn't always have to be starting a business, but like to me, entrepreneurial spirit is, I don't like the way things are. I can go do something about it. And I want them to have that. I want that resilience, because then I think that solves so many problems that people have. They're not happy with the way things are, but they don't have the confidence or the understanding of how to fix it or change it. So then they just stay stuck and they're not happy and they're miserable. Where if they had the entrepreneurial spirit, like, okay, I don't like this, I'm going to do something about it and go change it one way or another. So I bet your boys have that, especially since they got to be involved. Like our boys haven't been super involved in our businesses to where like
Right.
they did some of the stuff. So that might
They're
be a
just named
regret of
after
mine.
them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That might be a regret of mine of not making them be more involved. Although what we'll talk about tomorrow, I'll give you a little tease. Roman and Leo in the last month have both expressed interest in what it is that I do, which now has me rethinking about, well, what does the future of my business look like? For the longest time, it was, let me build a business to provide for me and my family. Let me take care of my clients, but I don't need to build anything bigger. But now it's like, oh, well, if the boys have interest in this, like, well, maybe I need to build a bigger firm with more infrastructure. So there's
Yeah.
something for them to come in and work their way up.
It'd be
And
so cool.
I can build this business for them, which changes the way I look at like what I do going forward and how I make transitions and those types of things. So, um,
Dude, I'm excited about that conversation.
yeah,
I think
just a little, just a little tease. I told you beforehand I had good stuff to talk about, but I wasn't going to tell you, but that fit in today's call. So,
okay, I do want to add one thing to what we
yeah,
were
yeah.
saying earlier, is the leaving bit
Hmm.
around launching into new endeavors in life,
Yeah.
and trusting yourself and all that. The truth is, there's no universe we could have done it without this incredible support network. So like my coach, who's one of my best friends in the world, my group of five friends, family friends, that my brother who came in that moment, the endless, like, dude, every time we took a risk and left, when we took a risk and evolved and we built and build and create and try something new, it always feels so uncomfortable. Like it is um immensely uncomfortable on your nervous system, on your, like, the risk, all the risk triggers are hitting. It's not like they're not there. You're just like, ah, it's really scary. And without that community of friends and people that come around and say, you can do it. You can do it. We're here. You know what I mean? You just couldn't do it. And so in one way, yes, I bet on myself, and Jen and I bet on ourselves, and we're like, let's do it. We can build something different. But truthfully, that was only possible. Um, Even with our kids coming alongside, like, guys, you can do it. It took all of us together. It took a whole community of people to support us to be able to step out and do that. Just because it is so hard to create new things and to try. Um, so I do want to add that. If you're listening and you're like, I want to leap, like, who's around you that is going to help you leap and in it for the journey? Because it takes longer than you think sometimes.
I think it's a great point to bring up and one to kind of bring us to a close. But I also think that what I want to add to that is like what you just described, like that's going back to my Kendrick Lamar quote. beauty and completion and faith in the unknown. Like that to me is the exciting part, is when you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing for the right reasons. You were called to do it. You didn't necessarily know why, but you knew that that chapter you did, things work themselves out. And like that is a part of the authentic life, and the pursuit of it is having the faith that things are going to work themselves out, even if you don't know how. And it could be the support system, the right person comes and says the right thing at the right time, the right client comes, like things all took care of themselves to get you where you needed to be. And I think a big part of that is you were following the direction that you were supposed to go in. And not that those things can't happen if you're off track, but I just think the more aligned you are, the more you're moving the path you're supposed to be on, those things fall into place, and the right people are around you and all those types of things. So to me, it's exciting to know that, you know, there was planning that went, you didn't just do craziness. There was planning, financial planning, you had a game
Oh yeah.
plan, you knew your burn rate, all that type of stuff. You surrounded yourself with the right people, and you knew you were supposed to be doing this thing, and you were open. I think another thing you said, that you were open to like what comes. And then you just went and did what you're supposed to do, and things continue to work themselves out. So like to me, that's a great example of what living your authentic life is, and pursuing the things that you're supposed to do, even though you don't know exactly how it's going to work out.
Yeah. It's a wild ride. It's a fun life. I'm not gonna lie. It's a
Mm-hmm.
really fun
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
very fun. It's never dull. It's very fun. So,
All right, man. Well, where can I send everybody to follow you and Jen if they want, as we bring this to an end?
oh, okay, yeah, great question. Um, we have a website, but it is insanely outdated. But we do have a website. So our company's Expansion Lab, and it is just expansionlab.io. You'd find us. That website will evolve again pretty fast, and the leadership lab will be on it, and it'll be available to anyone that wants to check it out. And then beyond that, you can find us on Instagram. Just the handles at Expansion Lab.
And naturally, I'll link to those in the show notes and all that type of stuff to make it easier. So, but I just want to send people so they can follow along what you're doing, get to know you better, because you'll be a regular face on the show. And next time, I do want to dive into, since you have 3 boys, I have 3 boys. That's a big part of, what we have to navigate as we live our life. I want to talk about what you've been doing and what you've seen work and what hasn't worked, and just to give the parents out there an idea of like, how do we help our kids do these things that we're trying to do, and help them do it at an earlier age if possible. So that'll probably be the theme of our next one, at least to kick it off.
I love it, man. Man, I'm excited doing this. It's fun to be with you.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Phil. Looking forward to tomorrow at 11 my time, so we can dive into the boys wanting to come into the business, and then dive into the book some more.
Can't wait, man.
All right. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, see you, bud.